Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. We're going to get started here. If everybody could gather around the podium, the podiums. All right. Don't be afraid. Everybody could come closer to the podium. The bar is not going anywhere. That bar we could move closer, maybe, actually. Move the bar over here. For those of you who do not know me, first off, welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for coming. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Sean Gaffey. I'm the chairman of the IIBN, the New York chapter, recent chairman of the IIBN New York chapter, and honored to be that. Tonight we have a great program. We have an excellent keynote speaker in George Moore. So we're going to get started after I'm done speaking for about 40 minutes. But somebody actually told me this is where I come to get my ashes, and then they put me up here, and I don't know. But apparently that's not the case. So first off, I'd like to thank UCD. UCD is a new sponsor for the IIBN. We are delighted to be working with them. UCD, the founder of the IIBN over in the UK, Connor Foley's a UCD alum, and the former chairman of the New York chapter, Coleman Lydon, is also a UCD alum. So UCD has a big connection here with the IIBN. The IIBN, just for those who don't know, we have chapters throughout. We have chapters in London, we have a chapter in Dublin, in Northern Ireland, and we certainly have a chapter here in New York. And we're a global Irish network. We like to think of ourselves where you can come here, plug into the network, and you get access to everything that is the IIBN and all of our events. So if you have is the first event, welcome. We'd like to see you at some of our other events, and tell us how you'd like to work with us. I'm going to bring up Quentin Futrell and George Moore. They're going to do a little Q&A. Where they're going to go over some of the things that are pertinent right now with the Irish economy and just kind of the world as a whole that is going on. And by way of introduction, I'm sure a lot of you that are here know about George, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of his background. George is currently the managing director, managing partner of Ravensdale Capital. Formerly, he was the chairman and CEO of TargusInfo, which was purchased for roughly $650 million, give or take a buck or two here and there, by Newstar. And he's also currently was appointed the ambassador for Enterprise Ireland in December. So that's an important role that he's taking. George, in his role at Targus, which he founded in 1993, he developed basically a new generation real-time information service using intelligent call processing. He's a pioneer in the development of that area, and we're delighted to have him. He has his economics and MBS degree from UCD and also holds his MBA and DBA from George Washington University. He currently resides in Washington, D.C. with his wife, Angela, their 3 children, and who's originally from Northern Ireland. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Quentin Futrell from the Wall Street Journal and George Moore. Please join me in giving them a round of applause.
Thank you, George, for agreeing to do this. It's a pleasure to have you. I feel a little like it's a presidential debate, and I feel a little like Ross Perot. That's not a compliment from me, but
I'm taller.
We'll figure that one out afterwards. We can do a measure up. So it's a pleasure to have you here. You studied, of course, BCom, and you did an MBS at UCD. When was that, George? What year?
I'm ancient, about 1969
Wow,
to 1973.
That's before I was born. Just thought I'd. So what do you remember about UCD? Do you have any fond memories at all of the?
Many fond memories, not many great memories. Let's see, 1969, I remember there were 4 of us went to UCD at the time from Dundalk, which we're from, and one of the guys is over here, Jerry Murphy, Enterprise Ireland, and there was Anthony MacDonald and Martin McCarthy, and we were scholarship guys, so we got scholarships. We weren't like you Dublin guys who could afford to go to UCD.
You don't know that for sure.
All I remember was it was a foggy night going up there, and got into this room, and there were 4 beds, like a dormitory, and that's what the 4 of us were. But UCD back then in '69, it was very different from what it was today. I mean, we were the first guys at Belfield. We were stuck in these Stalinist concrete tilt-up buildings. The student bar was a porta cabin. The bank at the time, Allied Irish, I was there back then, was also a double size porta cabin. But probably UCD, there were 300 in the class. You were learning. Well, it was a good experience. And I think when I went on to do the MBS degree, that's where the class shrank from 300 to about 10. And that's where I really enjoyed it, because it was, you knew the name of your professor, he knew your name, and that was a great experience.
So you owe some of your success to small classrooms. That's good to know. UCD, you said 10 people. Well,
The danger among small classrooms, they can easily find you. I remember in the BCom, we had a law professor, and there were 300 of us up there, and he was sort of a nasty character, liked to pick on a lot of us. And but what we realized, he would always pick on people wearing a red sweater, and it took us 3 days to figure that out. We weren't data analytics guys at the time, but none of us wore red sweaters since then. So,
wow. So when did you move to the U.S.?
1973, and what happened at UCD that I have a tremendous loyalty to. In my last year as an MBS, there were 2 great guys, Tony Cunningham, professor of marketing, and John Teeling. He had just come back from Harvard, and they took me under their wing, and there was a scholarship to the US to do an MBA and a PhD. For whatever reason, they put my name in it, and I arrived here on September 15th, 1973.
And you went to Georgetown University?
George Washington
George
University.
Washington. And I wanted to ask you if you thought that you could have achieved, I heard a figure earlier, 650 million, is that give or take? Give or take.
Give or take about, yeah.
It's a nice round figure in any ways.
It's a big number.
So do you think you could have achieved what you did had you stayed in Ireland at that time, or you think you really needed to leave?
Well, Ireland back, I never felt like I left Ireland. I came over here to go to school, and my first job was with a company called California Analysis Centers, and I needed the job badly. I needed a green card. And so, believe it or not, I was working illegally for the first 6 months until the president of the company said, we need to go to London, and you speak a form of English, so we'll take you with me. And I said, I have a slight problem. And so he got me a green card. And but the business I've been in needs a very large consumer economy. We're in the data analytics business. So everybody in this room has used our technology over the years. Our technology has been used for you. And back in '73, believe it or not, Ireland wasn't a great place to be versus the '90s. The '70s and '80s were dark periods. We're just joining the euro. Back then you either joined the bank or the public sector. Maybe I would have been better off joining the public sector, given where they are today, Sorry to all the public sector people here, but no, I needed a large consumer economy, and that's what the US is.
Right. And TargusInfo, they say the best ideas are simple ideas. So you say we all use the technology. Can you just give us a explanation of what it was, the germ of that idea?
Yeah, it was, so when I joined this company, California Analysis Centers, I actually joined as a transportation econometrician. And my first project was in Los Angeles. Given all the traffic flows, the freeways, how would you time the traffic lights to move all the traffic efficiently? And that's a classical operations research, linear programming problem, and that was my background. But there were a lot of data behind that project, a lot of demographics where people lived, and So at California Analysis Centers, I started to build these consumer segmentation systems that would classify you all into all these little clusters. And but what happened, after 6 years at California Analysis Centers, I was senior vice president, nice house, wife, 2 kids, horses, dogs, the whole thing. And I wanted to take the business a different way. And the president of the company, I wanted to take all our technologies we were building and put them on a PC platform. And this was back in 1983. And Quentin wasn't born in 1983. PCs weren't around.
Oh, it's mere glint in my mother's eye in 1983.
Yes. And so his most famous expression to me was, those little itty-bitty machines will never amount to a hill of beans. And he was from West Virginia. As some people who know me well, I'm opinionated, pragmatic. I like to have the courage of my convictions. I like to act with those. And so I called him everything but a white man. And he fired me. And that happened to be on March 16th, 1983, which wasn't a great day in my life because I was on a nice income. And in those days, you were fired without severance. You were basically shown down to the parking lot, called a cab, and out you go. But what I did was started my first company called National Decision Systems, and it was very successful. We used customer money to build the company. Never went for private equity or venture capital, and customers believed in our story. And so for companies like American Express, we had built this clustering system, and they could take, Quentin, you could call up American Express or have an American Express card, and we would put you into cluster number 5, meaning you're 6 times more likely to use the American Express card for exotic vacations, electronics, etc. And that was a great business. And we sold that in 1990 to a company called Equifax. NDS, it was in San Diego, just went to the moon. It was a great ride. And but what happens in the U.S., the minute the company's booming, some bigger company wants you, and you sell it. It's you don't hold on to companies in the IT space for your grandkids because the DNA is not there. And then I started TargusInfo.
And now you're helping other people start their businesses.
Yeah, but the entity I run now, so we sold, TargusInfo was a very simple company, and everybody in this room has used our technology. And the idea back in 1993 was, so I'd sold NDS, did my 2-year stint as CEO. I'm not good at working for other people. I don't like to seek approval for decisions. I like to make them. And so I started TargusInfo, and the CEO or president of Pizza Hut at the time had a problem. He just wanted to know, there were 12 million Americans called Pizza Hut every week to buy a pizza, and he didn't know where they were. So he didn't know what legal franchisee delivered a pizza. And on the data analytics side, everybody tried to solve this problem outside the telephone network and couldn't solve it. And I had a few friends at AT&T, and they said, well, anybody who makes a phone call, 2 things happen. There's the voice channel, meaning you're talking to the person, and there's data channel of the call setup, the billing, is this a permissible call, blah, blah, blah. And so I figured out how to push a latitude and longitude down the wires. And so our first application of TargusInfo was, when you call for a pizza, within 100 milliseconds, we figured the crosshairs of where you were calling from, and then we had a technology that figured out the legal franchisee who delivered the pizza, and then AT&T bridged the call. And then the core business of TargusInfo became very simple. When any of you are on the web or on the phone, and the party you're calling or interacting with on the web needs an analytic about you, we push that down. And we did it 1 trillion times last year, about 2.6 billion transactions every day, but we billed every transaction. And some transactions were a tenth of a penny, some were 2 pennies. They were big, yippee, big deals. But everybody in this room, if you get onto Best Buy or get onto Facebook or whatever, and you see advertising coming at you, there's an analytic from our company that you're interested in the Gathering in Ireland or electronics at Best Buy or the Black Card at American Express, and it was all targeted at you. That's what we did.
Wow. This is before Google Maps. This is amazing. You're tracking behavior and analyzing consumer behavior. That's incredible.
Yeah, not only that, we violated every privacy law within the EU,
I think that was
but we
before there
didn't
were
care
privacy
because we were in the US. Yeah.
Right. So luckily you were there before the privacy laws, which was smart. So right
Well,
at the
privacy
beginning
is
of the internet.
overrated. So anyway,
So did you invest in Facebook yourself?
No. Not at their public share price, for God's sake. Facebook's a fabulous company, fabulous franchise. Over 1 billion pairs of eyeballs use Facebook, and they've got such a, as they say, classic word, first mover advantage. They'll make a lot of money. It's just when, There's a lot of great companies out there who just never make money. Facebook is not profitable today, but I wouldn't bet against the company.
Okay.
They're smart. They've got a lot of money. They'll figure it out.
And was it last year you had a roundtable discussion with a group of business leaders, including Bill Clinton, and you were talking about Ireland and how to solve the problem that is Ireland at the moment. And can you tell us a little bit about what happened to that meeting?
Well, we talked about very important affairs, and then we went to the bar. And first of all, at that particular meeting, it was under Chatham House rules, so I can't talk about what happened in the meeting. But I think it was important that the sole goal of that meeting was with American CEOs of very large corporations. Some of them had an Irish identity, most didn't. And I think the current government of Ireland, obviously the Fine Gael government, the Taoiseach Enda Kenny, was to give them a confidence of they're on the right path. I won't talk about the specifics of the conversations, but it was basically fortifying or reinforcing within the Taoiseach that this is what you need to do to get Ireland on the right path. And so if he left with a vote of confidence, courage of his convictions to execute the right strategies, that was the outcome of that conference.
Right. So to talk about you outside of that meeting, how do you think the government is doing at the moment, and what advice would you have for Mr. Kenny?
Are we on the Chatham House rules?
No, we're beyond. We're now after the meeting, and we're having a drink in the bar.
I would not like to be a politician in Ireland today. You have extraordinarily difficult decisions to make. Most of those decisions may result in political suicide. We had the extension of the bailout last week, which was good for Ireland. The government cash flows were improved by $2 billion a year. We kicked the can down the road for 40 years and hope to pay off this debt with cheap euros. This week Standard & Poor raised our rating, so our debt will be cheaper, the markets will be open, but there's still serious problems. Ireland is a heavily indebted country, and nobody's going to forgive that debt, and that debt has been forced on the taxpayer. A lot of goodness has happened. I am apolitical. I'm not Fine Gael for the Labour or Fianna Fáil. I like to be apolitical. But there are tough decisions. A lot of people here are from the public sector. It's got to become smaller. It's an affordability issue. Ireland cannot afford the size of the public sector today. We can't afford it. But then, how do you reform that? Extraordinarily difficult, because within every silo of the public sector, whether it's the universities or the Garda Síochána or the health board, local constituencies will suffer. And we can all Monday morning quarterback on what happened last week. We've gotten debt forgiven, but I would say our current government in Ireland is doing a very good job managing the economy. They've restored Ireland's reputation. Foreign direct investment into Ireland's very good. Exports are very strong from Ireland. Domestic demand is flat. But a lot of tough decisions have to be made. And, Fine Gael were not in government for a long time, and you can see the public opinion polls in Ireland where Fine Gael's popularity is lower now than Fianna Fáil, and the Irish have short memories. So it's a very difficult situation, but the government is going to have the fortitude to make tough decisions. We are no ways out of the woods in Ireland. So.
You mentioned kicking the can down the road. Do you think is it inevitable do you think that Ireland will default on its sovereign debt at some point, or do you think that's an avoidable situation? It's sort of check out your crystal ball, George, and tell us what you see.
Well, I'm not an economist who like to predict what just happened, but I think, no, Ireland is, I think we're going to scrape along the bottom for a while. When I say that, we have 14% unemployment in Ireland, which is a tragedy in itself. There's nothing to change that in the short term. I mean, unless we find oil off the coast of Ireland, or we find a cure for cancer, we charge a lot for it. Ireland will bump a lot along the bottom. For Ireland to default, we would have to have another international crisis,
Right.
where nobody will buy our bonds, and then we have to have another bailout, because we go to the bank of last resort, which is the ECB. I would actually be more bullish on Ireland long term, but in the long term we're all dead. It will take a long time.
Right.
Unemployment, like in this country, you heard of the President's State of the Union message last night. We're still predicting in this country that in 2016, unemployment will still be between 7 and 8%. We've never seen that in this country. So we're having this long-term structural unemployment, and the same in Ireland. And it is a tragedy, but no, Ireland, I think will run well, unless there's an external event. We'll pay our way through this.
Right. But you think the reputation of Ireland has in some way turned a corner, if not the economy? Do you
Well, it's our reputation is greater outside of Ireland than inside of Ireland. So I think Andy Kenny's popularity is very high internationally. Why? Well, there were no riots in the streets with this bailout. There were no strikes. We're not like Greece. We took our medicine. Whether it was the right medicine or not, that would be Monday morning quarterbacking, which I would refuse to do. But like in the US and in Asia and Africa, where I've been for the last couple of months, Ireland's reputation is quite high. And even UCD, who's also in Asia, reputation is quite high. And last week's reshuffling of our debt, that was a positive event. So it's good.
People always talk about emigration as sort of, at the moment, especially with people who have to emigrate because they can't find work at home, as a sort of a painful, and you have the image of the Keening women and all of that. Yours, my own as well, seems to paint a different picture, which is a lot of people see it as maybe a rite of passage, and you seem to have, it seems to have been a really fruitful and sort of wonderful thing for you. Would you agree with that, or how do you feel about
Well, it has been
living
good
here?
for me, yeah, sure. It's
You've had a good life here the last.
I never felt I emigrated. It was just opportunities came up here that I loved. I loved the U.S. and what I wanted to do required a large consumer economy, and I was very successful in that. But immigration has always been a safety valve. But it's different. I remember in 1969 or 1973 when I left Ireland, they had an Irish wake for me of, they all thought you're leaving and you don't come back. Well, 2 months later I was back, and then 3 months later I was back again, and it's a whole new generation where the world has shrank, but immigration is a safety valve. The Irish have been successful all around the world. I'm delighted that those safety valves do exist in the current economic situation. It would be terrific if Ireland recovered, which will take time, and less people are leaving, and we're keeping our most productive assets in Ireland. That'll take a while. It'll take a while.
Do you get back much, George?
Oh yeah, about 6 or 7 times a year. We have a home in Carlingford, halfway. Most of the Dubliners here that don't know where Carlingford is. That was the other thing I remembered at UCD. Most Dubs thought Northern Ireland began at Swords at the airport, and even Quentin tonight. Have you ever been to Northern Ireland? Well, I've been to Castle Bellingham. Jesus, It's,
In my defence, we were talking about Dundalk.
yeah.
I know Dundalk is not in Northern Ireland, but yes, people can be very Dublin-centric. You're right. And finally, I wanted to ask you about the kind of culture of doing business. And I was talking to some people here this evening, and they were just newly arrived. Other people, I'm sure, have been here for many years. What do you think the defining difference between the business culture in America and Ireland is? It sort of a positivity, a psychological one, or how would you define that?
I started companies off here. My first company, I was 31, had a broad, flat Dundalk accent, which has slightly modified, but I do listen to tapes to make sure I don't lose it fully. But in the US, they would bet on guys, entrepreneurs who had an idea. I remember after I got fired and I needed to pay the bills, companies like American Express, JCPenney, Citibank gave me a lot of projects just on the strength of George's reputation, and we built both our companies, NDS and TargusInfo, without external equity. We used customer money, and we walked into. I remember in 1993 with AT&T, they had all the data on the network. They had a network, and I convinced them to give me access to all the data, access to the network, and pay me $100,000 a month for bringing clients to that network, and they bought off in it. That would have been, if I went into Aircom and made that pitch, I think I'd be throwing it in my ass, and who the hell are you? So it's very different. There is a great bet in the US on entrepreneurs. That has changed in Ireland, but not to the same degree as here. And I do invest in companies in Ireland, and the quality of the people is 10 times better than what was coming out when I graduated. People are more worldly. They're not smarter, they were just exposed at an early stage to a lot of different experiences. And I would bet on a lot of Irish companies, but we're a small nation, and so any company in Ireland, especially in my space, the data analytics or the IT space, you've got to look beyond the shores of Ireland to expand.
Right.
You can't be, like I was 2 weeks ago in Cork, and I was sort of chairing a, what do you call it in Ireland, Dragon's Den. And this guy said, I can build a €2 million company in 4 years. And I said to him, why the hell bother? You want a couple of €1 million to build a 2 or 4 million euro company. And so the scale is beyond the shores of Ireland. And events like this, the whole Irish diaspora can aid companies. So, the opportunities, this country's got 300 million people. Strongest, there's only one place like Silicon Valley. And believe it, the IT industry is not in the US, it's in Silicon Valley. That's where it is. That's the heart of it all. And we don't have that in Ireland. So, direct answer to your question, a lot of smart folks just need an opportunity, need guidance, need capital, and that's one of my personal goals. As now that I've got more time on my hand.
You have a rather low profile in the Irish press. Should we take that personally as a former member of the Irish?
Thank God. So, yeah. In fact, I was thinking coming up on the train this afternoon, why the hell did I agree to be interviewed by an Irish reporter? I mean, that's sort of like suicide. And you guys take no hostages, but no, why look for a profile? My wife and I enjoy life. My wife's from across the border in Northern Ireland, and we enjoy life. We enjoy our privacy, and the media are not always the kindest in Ireland. So.
Oh, George, that's so. I won't take offence to that.
Do take offence, because it's meant to be offensive.
We're pussycats, George. Finally, you mentioned the State of the Union address last night. It seems like a place to end. What did you think of Mr. Obama's performance? Did you think it was what did you think of it before I put words in your mouth?
The performance is always excellent. It's the results that are not.
Ah.
And he's a tremendous speaker. As I said, I'm a pragmatist. You know, the State of the Union speech, and I lived in D.C. for about 10 years. That's where I live now. I live in California for about 12 years. But, the State of the Union, and all politics there are local. The State of the Union message, we call it the Super Bowl of politics. And, the president gets up and he talks about everything he's going to do, and it's something for the girls and something for the boys. And it's a big love fest. And the key is, at 8:30 this morning, what's he going to do? So growth in this country is anemic. So last year was less than 2%. That's not very good if you want to cure unemployment issues. It's not very good if you want to stimulate the economy so they can take more exports from Ireland. We've had a great experience in Ireland where Fine Gael and Labour got together, and they're not eating each other alive. They're doing good things. Washington is so polarized that I'm not blaming the president. It's not as effective as it should be. Okay, and so the speech last night, I could have written that before he presented it. It's the way the president talks about what he's going to do for the next 4 years. The key is pick 3 of those ideas and execute very well against them.
Right. That seems like a good place to end it, George. You've been a really good sport. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Griffin. Appreciate it. Thanks. Okay. Can I ask him some questions now? So.
We're going to take questions from the floor. If you raise your hands, we'll be able to see you.
No questions. Great. Well, that's an excellent question, and I'll give you the honest answer. When we sold, TargusInfo was a California company, and we sold the predecessor company, National Decision Systems. I told my wife we were going to move to California for 2 years just to get it off and running. We were there for 12. And then when I started TargusInfo, and she wanted to be close to Mama, my mother-in-law. And the great news was when we lived in D.C. in the early years, the mother-in-law would come 3 times a year. And when we lived in California, she'd come in for once every 3 years. Yippee! And she's a great lady. But so what actually honestly happened, it's a true story. I had fumbled my wife for about 2 years on moving back to the East Coast. And but eventually one night I came home and there's a real estate sign on the property. There was a moving van called. The kids were enrolled in schools in D.C. And she says, "We're out of here, bucko, if you'd like to join us." And so actually most of our employees at TargusInfo, we had about 200 engineers in California, and Virginia was more finance, sales and marketing, and I was bi-coastal. So that's how we ended up there.
Do you think the trajectory of the business was altered because of that choice, or?
No. I do say that we've got, culturally in California, there's especially amongst the engineers, you get great individuals of it's never, we can't do that, it's how are we going to do it. And then most of our customers were on the East Coast anyway. No, it didn't matter. In today's technology of Skype and video conferencing, it really didn't matter in the long term. So, but the honest reason why it did end up in Virginia, I was taken by the ear over there. So that's the honest truth. So.
Any other questions?
Is there potential to create a Silicon Valley in Ireland?
No.
Because outsourcing there, or?
I don't, actually, there's an ecosystem there in Silicon Valley in California where there's capital, there's great universities, there's great entrepreneurs, and that recipe is tremendous at creating a great enterprise. If you look at Facebook, they were founded in Boston. Where did they end up? California. I think Silicon Valley is very unique within the U.S. There isn't another Silicon Valley outside of Silicon Valley, even in the U.S. That being said, it's expensive. We poach each other's engineers. I moved headquarters down to San Diego. Why? Nicer lifestyle on the beach, more sun, but didn't like to move north. And there was a lot of poaching of engineers, and that was really disruptive. But when it comes to Ireland, when you consider IDA, Enterprise Ireland have done a tremendous job of attracting great companies like PayPal, Dundalk, by the way, Google, Facebook, and the same in this country. We are not creating the great engineers in this country, the great mathematicians that we should, and Ireland's not doing it either. And UCD and I've talked about this. We're graduating too many I shouldn't say soft science, it's a misnomer. Too many arts and culture folks like Quentin, and I'm
Getting a hard time here.
I'm a hard science guy, so I think, like in my background, which is really data analytics and decision sciences, when you talk to the CEO of Google Ireland, we're at the tail end of analytics. We're not at the epicenter of building these engines, and until we create great mathematicians, computer scientists in Ireland. So, UCD, they're building a new science center, and it's tremendous. I mean, most of you, I hope you're from UCD, but go to the campus today. What they have achieved is first rate. It's so different than 1969 when I went there. And I think we need to keep investing in our folks there. We'll never be a Silicon Valley, but we can be a great center of excellence for decision sciences and data analytics. It's not that hard. You need the people, and then you need to harvest those people, make sure they have capital, opportunity, mentorship. But Silicon, I think they call it Silicon Isle at one stage, it's a little bit too arrogant. You could never do it. But you can be a great sub-ecosystem to what happens in the US and other places. So, question?
One more question?
Sorry, it might be similar to
it seems there are, I met a couple of companies in the last few weeks when I was in Ireland, and access to capital was very difficult. Now, I don't know whether that's the availability of capital or their ability to present confidently to get that capital. I'm totally against the grant culture. I'm a child of this country. Apologies to everyone. Here, you mortgage a house, to build a company. I don't have I think goodness, first of all, government and universities are catalysts to creating this. They're not the people who create it. So if I look at UCD, which I'm very familiar with, some of the new programs, and Kieran Hogarty, the Dean of the Business School, is here. He's got a great vision for what's going to happen. Goodness is going to come out of that, and great people will come out of that. Quite honestly, the government should be catalysts to helping these companies evolve. But at the end of the day, they need mentorship from guys like myself and other folks, direction. There are a lot of, I've seen even in the US, a lot of great, a lot of companies who never got off the ground, great ideas, but just didn't get the funding. And then I've always said, ended a lot of speeches by saying, nobody ever built or started a large company. They all started small companies. And I would like to see in Ireland where we have a couple of examples of small companies who became great. And what did Michael Dell do in the US? It's tremendous what he achieved, but if you look at the whole story of how he built a $25 billion enterprise, and now he bought it back in the last few days. Maybe that scale doesn't happen, but I think the educators, the government, and the financial community need to be catalysts to this. And at one point, I would say, since time is running tight, if it fails, it fails. Quentin didn't ask me the question, what have I failed on? And I failed on a lot of crap. Twice our companies were under siege, and failure needs to be accepted. It is in this country. So I don't have a direct answer to your question, but all the institutions you mentioned should be catalysts and get out of the way.
Thank you, George. That was a nice one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and that was great. We're going to, just to wrap this up, we're going to have Professor Kieran O'Hogarty from UCD. He's the Dean of the Business School, and he's just going to come up and give some closing remarks. So please join me in giving him a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Somebody earlier mentioned that they like my Irish, so I might continue. So, Gormina Mahagavs of Choctanocht, agus to my on a host of her and sure her count UCD exer count Skolgano Smurfit. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you in particular to Sean Gaffey and his colleagues at IIBN. Sean in particular, thank you for getting my name right. That was very well done. And also to UCD alumni and Tara Collins of the Smurfit School alumni for arranging this particular evening. I think it's been very successful. Thank you to Tom Moran. As we know at home, we say thank you to the parish priest for the hall. And those who know Tom will know it's particularly appropriate to thank Tom for the use of the hall here at Mutual Life of America. We're very grateful to Tom. He's a great friend of the school, a great friend of Ireland. And we're grateful to him for the use of this magnificent location. Thanks also to Quentin Fottrell, who I remember from the Irish Times as George said, arts and culture. And it's very good to see him doing well over here as well. Somebody that we all remember writing very skillfully, very gracefully in the Irish Times. And he continues to interview very skillfully and very gracefully. So thank you, Quentin, for hosting and being the MC, if you like, this evening. And thank you also to George Moore. George is a great friend of the school, great friend of UCD, great friend of Ireland. He's been a very great advisor to me in my time as Dean of the Smurfit School. And as he mentioned, we have a vision for the school which we are very proud of. We see ourselves as Ireland's global business school. And what that means is that we are a very strong business school in Ireland, a national leader. We don't compete with any other school in Ireland. We compete with schools internationally, because that's where our graduates and our students compete with. So they deserve the best education they can get from an Irish business school, but they deserve it to be on an international stage. So I'm very insistent that we do not see any local university as a competitor. We see international business schools as our competitors. We're the only business school in Ireland with the triple crown of accreditations, the only business school in Ireland to be consistently ranked in the top 100 in the world. About 40% of our students are international, about 1/3 of our faculty. So from that we can build a very strong global presence. But we're also very conscious that we need to build on the local strengths within the Irish economy to build an even better business school for our students and for Ireland. And there are three particular areas, drawing from some of what George mentioned, that we think where Ireland is particularly strong, where we can build from that an international reputation and reach in business education. One of those is digital business and society. 9 out of 10 of the top ICT companies in Ireland, in the world, are based in Ireland, most of them in Dublin. Particularly in areas like business analytics, digital marketing, social media. That's one area where we intend to grow expertise and to build it from where we are already to build our reputation internationally. Secondly, Ireland, from a country of 4 million people, produces enough food for 40 million people. So the innovation in food is an area where Ireland has particular expertise, particular strengths for the future. When EU quotas are lifted over the next number of years, the markets will open up even more strongly for us internationally. And UCD has a particular strength in the food area, so innovation in food is a second area where we will focus on building strength from Ireland to the international, to extend our international reputation and reach. And the third area is financial services. Many people here tonight are in financial services, not necessarily finance itself, but for example, aviation finance and law, where about half of the aircraft around the world that are leased out of Dublin. And there's a very strong tradition of aviation finance coming out of GPA traditionally, but many of those spawned into very strong international lessor companies which are based in Dublin and or in Ireland. So that's a particular area again where we are focused on to build a thought leadership function in that space from Dublin, where people will go from there around the world and come into Dublin from around the world in order to learn what's best about international finance, particularly in the area of aviation finance and law. So 3 areas where we think Ireland is very strong, where we will build on in order to enhance our reputation internationally: digital business and society, particularly analytics, digital marketing, innovation in food, and financial services, innovation particularly in areas like aviation finance and law. We can't do this on our own. We need your help, and whether you're a UCD alumnus or not, we're very keen to work with people that are in this space in order to do this together. Because one of the reasons why I took this job as Dean is because Ireland right now needs people to put their shoulder to the wheel. As a small open economy, needs an international business school that can punch above its weight and compete with the best business schools internationally, as we do right now. So I look forward to working with you all and maybe connecting with you all, as our alumni posters say. My email is, for obvious reasons, is not necessarily kieran.hogarty@ucd.ie, but Dean of Business, all one word, at ucd.ie. And if you feel you can help and you want to connect with us, please send me an email, and I'd very much like to talk to you on our plans, what we want to do for the future. Gurmíl Maithagh agus tá sé go hinsig sibh ar fad eáil an seo anocht, and I hope to work with you very much in the future in building an even better presence internationally for Ireland in business education. Thank you very much.